So we're going to kick off the last session with our lightning talks. We have 5 speakers who will be speaking for about 10 minutes each. Just so that the audience knows, and as well as our speakers, please hold your questions till the end, until all of the speakers have gone through their talk. We just want to make sure that all of the speakers have the ability to get through their presentations. So without further ado, I'm going to just quickly run through the names of all of our speakers, and we will then start. So we have Carla Brown. She is the founder of Press the Go Button. Then we will have Greg Walsh. And Greg Walsh is the assistant professor and program director of the University of Baltimore. He will be followed by John Whalen, and John is the founder of Brilliant Experience. And then we have Jay-Z. She is a UX UI design lead at OfferPop in New York. And then finally, we have Lesley Humphreys, and Lesley is the interaction designer and information architect for Design for Contact. So we'll have Carla Brown, Greg, John, Jay-Z, and Lesley. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Carla, and I'm from Press the Go Button. Press the Go Button, what we do is we go into companies and nonprofits, and we help them figure out what is the next level for their company, and we use a methodology called innovation engineering. Ooh, thank you. Yellow side down, John told me. We use a methodology called innovation engineering to help them figure out what that next level is. And this is our methodology, this graph here at the bottom. And today I'm just going to give you a hint about the first step because I've got 9.5 minutes. But if you're interested in the rest, I'm more than happy to talk about that with you whenever you're interested. So that's what we're talking about today. So my hypothesis, my belief, is that the #1 cause of innovation failure and bad information architecture is this vision piece. And we've talked a little bit, I've heard little bits and pieces here today about alignment. And so I'm going to talk about alignment and specifically how to have that conversation with the CEO up front so that your innovation projects succeed and your information architecture, thus projects also succeed. So first thing you need to figure out is what is your client's inspirational why, and a term that I use always is, and this is from innovation engineering, is that the why needs to be both meaningful and unique, so it has to solve a client's problem, a real problem, and it also has to be different in the world, not just weird, but wow. And so we have our example here of a sofa bed. Okay, it was really meaningful, unique a while ago. It is helpful, and then whereas maybe a radio toaster, while pretty neat, not so useful. So why do you need the inspirational why? You could just go on in there and ask the CEO, what do you want to innovate on? And you can go ahead and start listing innovation projects, and woohoo, you could have a whole innovation pipeline set up in no time, right? I work with many startups whose roadmaps are many, many spreadsheets long of all the fun things their VPs want to throw into their app. And the problem with just doing that, even though it's really fun and it makes everybody very excited, is that you can't prioritize. And so when I work with the CEO or the leader of the endeavor, I'm going to want to get to what his or her commander's intent. This is like a military term, so that we have a prism for decision making that we can prioritize all the ideas that come up. And I don't know about you, but what I find is the longer I'm on a project, the more compromises you make as time runs out and resources fall off. And so you don't want to get down to a project in the end that was not nearly, it was a shadow of your original vision. So you want to keep that as well. Now, there's been a lot of conversation today about listening, and I was going to think that I was going to be really different and talk about that, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but I guess the part for me that is most important about this is that when I'm sitting down with that leader, they're going to start by giving me a lot of lingo, right? A lot of jargon, their mission statement, a bunch of stuff that sounds really good when you say it to the board of directors. I am a person who is very right brain, is very heartfelt, and so, if I don't get that CEO to the point where they are probably almost crying by the time the meeting is over, that they are so proud of this vision and so intent on communicating it to me, I have not really gotten to their inspirational why. Now, I work with people in the tech world, and when I ask them why they're passionate about their product, a lot of the times they're like, look at me like I am really strange. So that's not a good question to ask. Like, why are you passionate about your project? it works with some people, but not many. It's more to tell the story about how they came to that idea, maybe some stories from their childhood, and just understand the person that they are and what makes them tick. And especially in tech projects, it's often around curiosity and moving the human race along kind of level of stuff. We have talked about this a lot. But really, it's just getting at the tiniest speck of emotion that you see from that leader, that you see them hesitate, their eyes look up to the ceiling, they pause, they look like they're struggling to say the next sentence. That's your golden. That's the stuff that you want for their inspirational why. If it comes off the tongue easily, it's probably not any good. This is my life coach, Leanne, and this is how she sits during our sessions. No table between you, and that's really weird, because whenever you get in with a client, right, the first thing they do is sit across from the table from you. So the very first thing I do is ask if I can move to their side of the table, and I ask them to face me and sit knee to knee, just like we did. And we know immediately this creates an intimacy that you do not have when you have a big table or a whiteboard between you. And the use of silence as well, of course. We talked about that. But another thing Leanne does that I love is she puts her palms up, which I think is a very subtle but wonderful gesture of receiving. And so I just thought I would share that. That's Leanne, not me. When they start giving you this, you know you're in the bad place. This is not what you need for the inspirational why. You will need this later for when you're planning the how. But right now, if they start going there, just back away slowly. Here, I wanted to give some examples of inspirational whys in case it's a little unclear what I mean. They have to be really big things. And so when they say, we're making an app that does blue, 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 you're like, okay, great. Now we need to bring this up a level. There has to be a making a difference on the planet kind of reason for doing this. So it can be hard to get there with some people, but it's really worth it. I was an information architect before I was an innovation coach, so I put in trying to make it about information architecture, the content objects. In innovation engineering, what we do is we put the vision on a blue card. This is the blue card. And then all the innovations that come out of it go on yellow cards. And we connect them back up to the blue card. And we prioritize the yellow cards. So it's kind of like content objects in an architecture, right? It's the same. That's why I found it very easy to move from information architecture to a system for innovation. So if everything goes up to the vision, you are golden, go ahead and make your architecture. But if no, if they've got a bunch of stuff, a bunch of what I call yellow cards that really have nothing to do with that vision, they're probably sort of leftover from the previous whatever it was, then you actually back away from the information architecture and you need to face this question of product development, which is what I do. So if you need help with that, just let me know. And that's it. Thank you.
I am a failed stand-up comedian, so I feel very comfortable holding this microphone. No, I only did it once. It was okay. It was in college. Hi, my name is Greg Walsh, and today I'm going to talk about a project that I run up at the University of Baltimore called Kidsteam UB. We're going to talk about designing with your audience. So to get started, we're going to talk about co-design. So co-design is actually a subset of participatory design. I guess you guys have heard of participatory design before. So participatory design means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and that's a problem. Sometimes people mean it to say, I want to include my audience in the design of something. Sometimes people say, I'm going to use a focus group, and that's participatory design. Some people say, I'm going to just test it with someone, and that's participatory design. So we have this term co-design, and that means that the audience works in the design of the technology as our partner, right? This has really been used, this idea. We have the Nickelodeon app at the University of Maryland. The kids team there designed it for the iPad. They designed the fun parts. If you have any kids and you've downloaded the iPad app for Nickelodeon, the really fun things were actually designed by real children. And it won an Emmy last year, which was fantastic. The national parks, you guys have heard of that. They have a mission to get Americans into the parks. One of the problems is that sometimes people can't get to the park, so they've created, with kids, these different activities that you can do at home and learn about the parks, get the ideas behind the parks. And if you complete all the activities, you actually get a patch, just like if you were at a real national park called the Web Ranger. And then we worked with Carnegie Hall And Carnegie Hall had this problem. They have this really great concert they do with kids in New York and then kids in another country. It's simulcast. It goes between the two countries. Surprise, the kids in New York were not at all ever engaged in the concert. They would just sit there looking down, and they weren't really into it. We worked with them for a year with kids on the design of the concert. What was cool is that it was not about technology, it was about the user experience, and it was about the experience of the concert, and it turned out to be fantastic, and they were really engaged. So the way that we sort of brought this into reality is Kidsteam UB. It's an intergenerational design team. That means we have kids and adults. Children have to live in Baltimore City and be between the ages of 7 and 11. We meet twice a week for about 25 weeks. So there's about 12 weeks in the fall and about 13 weeks in the spring. And we work on several projects per year. So it's the same kids every other day with us designing. So they become really great design partners. All right, so you didn't sign up to learn about kids, right? I mean, that doesn't seem like what you guys do after hearing everyone. But really what we do is it's about audiences in general. And the whole idea of architecting happiness really comes from, in my mind, working with your audience in the design of things for them. So the stuff that I'm going to talk about now, I think can be applied to adults. I've done it with adults. It works out really well. I'm going to give you a typical design session where we're going to break it down in different parts and then give an example of what we've, most recently, what we've designed. So the first thing we do is we do snack time. Okay, so it's very kid-centric. Snack time, if you know, is when you eat snacks. There, it's pretty easy. We have popcorn, chips, everything's vegan. We make sure everything's gluten-free, peanut-free, vegan, the whole thing, right? The point of snack time is to get the wiggles out. That is really what we're trying to do. But really, sorry about that slide. What I want you to take away is that you need to feed your co-designers. That's super important. Whenever you have your audience involved, you need to feed them. There's actually scientific research that shows people are more creative and more adept at giving you ideas if they're fed. But what else is important is you need to let your people chat. When you're working with your audience, they've had a big day. They have to remove themselves from that day, and the first step is just letting them be themselves and talk about things in an unstructured way. Then we go to circle time. Probably not in most of your toolboxes for designing. But in circle time, we go around and we say our name and our age and some type of question of the day. Now, the reason we say our name and our age is because I say that I'm Greg. Like, no one calls me Mr. Greg or Dr. Greg. It's just Greg. The kids are just who they are. And I say my age. I'm 40. Right? Because the idea is that we're starting to break down power structures. They're used to all day talking to, Mrs. Gaynor or Mr. Vermouth or someone like that. But instead, now they're just talking to Greg. And, Greg's 40 and has no problem telling them how old he is. We discuss our design challenge for the session, what we're going to be doing that day. And the takeaway is that it helps our co-designers feel equal. Right? Because we want to make sure that it's not we're the powerful designers and you're the audience that we're being nice to. It's that we're all on the same level and we're trying to make something awesome. It also starts to focus our discussion to the design goal. So if you think of an upside down triangle, we're really starting to focus things down. Then we do our design activities. I mean, we have so much stuff. We use construction paper, cardboard. It's just fantastic. But these are our activities to elicit designs. Right? What we're trying to do is we're trying to do things that get the ideas out and the requirements out so that people can, and the kids and the adults can all share what they're thinking of. They can be upfront and generative, meaning that it can be something that we don't even know what we're going to be doing, but this is the design space. Or it can be evaluative and feedback-based where, hey, we built this thing, tell us how it's working. And they're usually fun. Playing with construction paper, cardboard, glue, 3D models, all kinds of stuff is fun. And everybody designs. Nobody can sit and watch. If you came and visited a Kidsteam UB session, you're going to be on the floor with us and you're going to be designing. Here's a low-tech drawing of a kid's controller. Here is a more high-tech. It's a three-dimensional rendering using a new scientific method called clay and some, what are they called? Pipe cleaners. Yeah, that's a magic ring. I can tell you afterwards, so I don't run out of time. This is a process we use called walking storyboards, where we put our ideas down and then the whole team goes through and actually marks our ideas in a linear fashion, so it's fantastic for time-based events or some type of serial event. And so we walk in and do this and we discuss at the end. So our takeaway is that you need to involve your audience at multiple points in the design process, not up front, not just up front, not just at the end, but all the way through. And we need to make sure that our design activities are accessible to our audience and everyone designs. Finally, the big ideas. 10 minutes is much shorter than I thought. Our big ideas. These are the summary of the ideas. We create affinity diagrams, but we discuss with our group similar and unique things that came out of that day. So we take all our ideas, put them up on the board, then we go through and say, well, what's similar between these different ideas? What's unique about these ideas? And start pulling that out. And this becomes the requirements for our next iteration of the prototype that we're building. Everyone gets involved in the debriefing, right? So the kids and adults are part of that. And I think that's really important for all design teams, is get everyone involved in that debriefing, as well as collectively determine those next steps. And a real world example, I showed you the walking storyboards. We were trying to figure out a great way to have kids do passwords. I don't know if you've ever had to work with a 7 to 11-year-old and remember passwords on a computer. So we came up with some ideas. We drew them up. One of them was about an amulet where you actually would wear something and tap it to the computer. It would unlock your web page. We started building low-tech prototypes for it. And after we were all done that, we did big ideas. We went forward. Then the high-tech stuff started to come out. So the next prototype was actually, we did 3D modeling with, the adults did this, between sessions. Actually, my grad assistant did it for 30 days in a row, so that was pretty awesome. Trying to print them out on a MakerBot. We then took RFID chips, which are the little radio frequency things that we slapped them on the back, programmed them up on the computer, and actually had the kids wear their amulets and be able to tap phones and such that would actually then load up their pages on the computer. And we're talking about that. So this is early stage, but this is where we're going with it. Just a way that we're working with our audience in the design of something pretty new. So overall, our takeaways are, you need to find out who your users are, but you knew that, right? That's pretty easy. But you need to invite them to be partners in design. That's what I want you to take away. Involve the end users in that design process. And you want the entire team to feel equal. We have a real bad habit of power struggles in our culture, and kids are very tuned into power, so we always dress down. If you're working with your audience, dress like your audience, get them in there, get them talking, but make them feel equal. Help them feel equal, I should say. And we also want to involve everyone in that design idea generation, because you might say something and that triggers one of your audience members to say something, which then triggers someone else to say something. It goes back and forth in this loop. And then discuss with the whole team where you're going next. And that is it. So thank you very much.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm John. I'll be your host for the next 10 minutes, or as we like to say, 600 seconds. And so what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about what we've been doing in trying to figure out our process as well. And so we've been really lucky to have all these cool clients that want to hear from, work with us on a little bit of thinking about really what your users really want, what they're really trying to do, what they're really trying to accomplish to try to get to what should the strategic thing be that we're building. And it's almost more like business engineering as much as it is in IA or UX. But in any case, we've had this sort of mix of psychology and innovation and IA. And so I want to tell you a little bit about this just to give you a sense of what we're trying, and you can tell me also how to do it better. So really the idea here is the following. That first, what we do is we really try to mention, here's why we do any of this stuff at all. And so let me just, you, I think, would probably have pretty compelling arguments. So one thing is that, hey, we know that you can have something that's a really shiny object that looks just like the other shiny object, but it might not do as well as the others. And so we all know this, and we're so thankful for Apple for reminding everyone that, hey, you should actually think about the UX and the whole process and the service design and everything else. And so that's one piece that we try to do. The other is that we try to say, hey, you can have this awesome product and it can be so cool, but we want you to kind of keep innovating because we don't want your building to look exactly like this after a while. So it turns out, right, so that's actually Polar is now going to be a startup center, it turns out. But we want you to keep innovating. So hopefully those two things are motivating enough for them to be like, well, gosh, we need to do something. Shit, this guy's in the room. Why don't we see what he has to say? And so okay, let's talk about it. So maybe I can just ask for your help here too. So just really quickly, what do you think? So I'll just super fast. What do you think user experience is? Shout it out. Wow. Okay, stuff that works. The user needs. Okay. facilitating interactions. Okay, let's keep moving. So it could be, thank you so much, that was really great. Okay. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Okay, so there's the look and feel, right? That could be a possibility, right? It could be like how it looks. It could be like actually the things you do, the way you like touch the thing or interact with it, right? But I'm actually going to vote for neither of those and probably nothing any of you said. And I'm going to try something a little different with you here. I'm going to say that UX doesn't really happen on a screen, okay? So where do you think I might think it happens? Wow, okay. Yes, all right. Okay, I think it does happen in your brain, so I want to talk to you a little bit about what I think happens here. So I would like to say that, okay, that first of all, I think there's lots of dimensions to user experience. And it was really interesting actually to hear Steve and his panel, and the other Steve and Christine, all of you were talking about these ideas on different levels. So one was on super high problem-solving, decision-making kind of things. Sometimes we were talking about very sensory things, like staring into someone's eyes. And I think there's some middle ground there that's really interesting. And so that's why I wanted to talk to you a little bit about all these different levels of representation that we can think about as we do design and think about user experience. Okay, so the way that we've tried to describe this is we've just come up with the name Emergent UX in the sense that it emerges from lots of these different dimensions that we're studying and measuring. And I'll just try and tell you a little bit about what some of those are, and then we can talk about it more, I guess, after the other two talks. So one of the things here first is just that we feel like, first of all, that word wrapping is really interesting, but the other is that, we think that the things that people don't say are the most interesting things. What are they really representing in their head that they just can't verbalize? And so how do we get at some of those things? And if we can get to those, then we can get to the really interesting stuff that might be really golden here. Okay, so let's talk about those. So, and just to give you a sense, what we try to do is think on all these different levels. So we think about, okay, we know that this is going to draw their attention. So this is one of the things we did this crazy, have you ever done any of these races where you go and jump through the mud and climb over this hill and, okay, great. Okay, a couple of people. Okay, so anyway, we had to do this too. And for this group here called Spartan, they have these really interesting races. But to design this, we wanted to say, what are all the dimensions we need to worry about? So we need to worry about what's going to draw their eyes, right? And what are they going to attend to? And we know from vision science how to control that to some extent. We know that they need to know where they're going and what there is around here, because we're good IAs. So we try to figure out where that stuff is. We know that there are lots of things that could trigger different, things are moving around a little, no problem. Different memories and semantics. So there's either the things that are near to you, or as well, just the races that might be near to you, and so on. And then when people have done these things, they have these like, oh yeah, I remember the time when we were climbing over that hill and that big guy went, whoa, and splashed in the mud. So you have all these emotions that are tied to this, that I actually got over that hill and I was so proud. And then they have to make decisions on, do they want to do this little race where these people here are just kind of all hugging, it's fun. This one here, the guy's like jumping over a river. Okay, that's a little bit more. And this one here, this guy's holding a big rock. He's like, roar! And so you want to know which of those you want to do, right? Okay, so we want to help them with that decision making and all these kind of pieces to this. So one of the things we do is we watch. We watch that. So normally this is a little dot that moves around the screen. It's kind of cool. We watch actually just where are they looking, what's drawing their attention, really what are they trying to find, what are they seeking? And so that isn't as, there we go. Oh, and the other thing we try to do is say with wayfinding or interaction design, what is it that they're trying to do in terms of interaction? So these are all people with touch screens for one of the first times for them. And so the one I like is Mr. Thumbs here. He tries something totally different than I would have guessed, right? So, but this is why we need to watch behavior and not just talk to them about what they want. Yeah, so see? Trust me. And so what we really try and do is see as much as we can about, so first of all, where are they looking, right? So we want to know what's happening there. We want to know how they might think they can interact with these things. Then we want to know things like, okay, when they think of luxury, what do they think of? And this could be very different for a young person to an older person, and so on. So we really want to know what are their sort of semantic maps, what's related, with their lifestyle, what is it they're doing when they're not traveling, and as an example here, and sort of capturing what's so different about these different personas or different target audiences. So we've got, here's where they're looking, here's where they're, the kinds of things they're thinking about. Here's how they think they want to interact with things in general. We have that sense. And then we want to know, what is it that they're actually saying? So we looked at the corpus of just an interview when we talked to them. We saw these huge differences. So this was younger adults, and they're like, I want this, and it's going to be for me, and I'm going to like it. I'm going to have more stuff, and can do it. And I want things. And this was a young parent who was like, we do this with our house and our time and our kids and the stuff they have in school and travel and husband. And you can see how different their life is just from collecting that corpus and seeing that difference. I know Wordle's kind of just a fun way to do that, and we might be a little more scientific, but I just wanted to give you the feel for it. And then we really want to try to get to what is it are they really trying to do, and where are they trying to go with their life, and what are the things that are their fears and concerns. So if we're trying to get an experience for them, this person here is like, wow, am I losing ground? Am I where I want to be with my career? Oh my gosh, all these fears. So okay, if that's the case with the product we're building, what are the ways we can reassure them or say it's going to be okay? And so we really want to know what are the things that are their drivers, right? And so we both infer this and also hear from them as well. Okay, good. And then if we've got all these things in our heads, okay, good, that works well. Then the question is, how are they actually going through this process of thinking about what they're doing and making a decision? So here, this is just one example of like a buying process, which is so different than what that previous person was doing. But in this case, just, hey, what is that? Oh, that's kind of cool. You know what, I want one. And for each of these things, all of you who are on the panel know very well, there are all kinds of ways that we can present information in a way that actually might either motivate them to act or scare them away. And we want to make sure that we're actually informing them to make the right decisions, as I think Steve is very passionate of and is right on with. And so anyway, I guess the key point here is what is that journey? What are they thinking about those moments, and what do they need at that moment in order to keep moving to the next step? And we know how to draw their attention with that. We know what emotions they might have at that point. We know what they're thinking about and how they might touch. Well, gosh, that means we might be able to make a pretty good experience. So so that was enough for 10 minutes. So I just want to give you the bottom line. So we've got 3 big points here, and you just saw 6 different pieces of the brain you can think about. Okay, the first is that we've got lots of dimensions we want to work with. So in this case, I'm just going to show them to you. And I was going to say that this happens in the... Yeah, font issues, no problem. But I'm glad you got it. The other thing is that, I think that actually there's so much that's unspoken that's so interesting, and that's why we want to watch behavior on so many different levels, whether it's eye tracking or hearing what they have to say and measuring that corpus, or actually watching them behave with an interaction design, or watching them in their daily lives. So we really want to know that kind of thing. And this is what we try to do in these different levels of psychology in order to pull out the emergent stuff that's really cool for a really cool user experience. And so that's it. I want you to design for the 6 minds. And so anything you can think of, you can start to look at it from that perspective. All right. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate your time.
All right, everyone, we made it. Thanks for staying. You guys are the committed. So my name is Jay-Z, kind of like the rapper. And... and I have a big personality, too. So I'm going to talk to you today about card-based UI. And I've used it on our big data product. I work at OfferPop, which is a social media B2B enterprise marketing software company. So card-based design is the foundation of the layout for Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, and especially now, Google Now. And I received a lot of emails about it last summer in New York, and I deleted them all because I had no idea what it was, and I was super busy. And then we started redesigning our big data product, and I realized that the cards could really, really help us and solve a lot of the problems that we had with data breadth and data depth. So I took a second look, and I became a really strong advocate of cards. So I wanted to step back and give you a little history of cards. We're all familiar with baseball cards and poker cards. Does anybody remember Garbage Pail Kid cards? Yeah, those are really fun. So cards are really great for stacking and shuffling without any scuffle. They're fun to play with. And for digital, let's just remember that it's really important to put information side by side, behind and in front of each other. And I'll talk about the digital incarnation in a couple of slides. So why are cards useful? They're useful, 1, because they stack responsively. 2, they make data lovable. 3, they delight users. And 4, they put more content above the fold. And so I'll demonstrate all of these values in the next 9 minutes. So 1, cards are useful because they stack responsively. This is a magazine layout, print, very fixed. And you'll see that there are, I would say, 3 elements. If we wanted to shove all of this content in tablet form instead of this kind of desktop browser width, what could we do? Well, I think we could carve up this layout so that the queue is in one card. And this photograph of these 4 dudes is in another card, a second card. And then all of this text block is in a third card. So perhaps in tablet, the guys could come under the queue, and then the text block could come under the guys. So when you break out content in terms of cards, it's very easy to shuffle them and reposition them. And that's what Pinterest does. So there are 5 columns on Pinterest. I think on extra large desktop, there's 7 columns, and then they go down to 3 columns in tablet. And each column is a fixed width. So if you have a really wide image, you would make it the same width as a medium width image, but the height of the image would change. So the aspect ratio would be proportionate. And the value of this is that, let's say you have an image that stops here. You don't have to create a lot of white space before the next row of cards appear. You can put the next image right below that image. So cards harmonizes layout, and they give you proportionate aspect ratios. So on tablet, what happened to the 4th and 5th column? So the 4th column, let's say, stacked right underneath the first column, and then the 5th column stacked right underneath the 2nd column. So cards are great for responsive designing between desktop, mobile, tablet. And they save you a lot of time because you make this decision about the tablet breakpoint one time, and then the system just does it again and again and again for you, so you don't have to make that decision all over again. And my friend at MTV Digital laments, we used to design things once. Now we design things 3 times or more. So with cards, we can go back to designing things once. And with all of that extra time, what are we possibly going to do? So we can design features for cards. We can design ways to make data more lovable. And that's the second way that cards help you. So I think Cassandra, is she still here? Cassandra and I were talking about tables earlier and how they repel you from data. You see an Excel spreadsheet and either you like run away or you kind of vomit a little in your mouth. When we work with big data, often we want to put things in tables and spreadsheets. And I've walked into user interviews with clients who are like picking lint off of their blazer instead of reading our spreadsheet because it's super boring to read a spreadsheet. So I've also walked into future client interviews with these cards. And then our client would say, oh my God, this email, I knew it was contributing the most to ROI. But now I have proof, and I'm going to tell my manager, and he might tell another one of the managers in the company. So that's how you start making data desirable. Cards make data scannable, digestible, and bite-sized, and shareable. So when data is shareable, it's very, very sellable. So when your senior product manager says, Lisa did a great job, she used cards and she made her product more valuable to the business as a whole instead of just to one vertical, it's a system-wide, company-wide product for the client now. That's when Lisa has created more value at the product and the business level. And that's when you know as a designer you've led change in your organization. But there's something for everyone. There's even more. So cards also delight users, which might even be more important to UX than the business. In this case, it's a really beautiful email. There are 4 cards here. But I get the same email that Greg would get. At Sail-Through, when I designed cards, I got a different email than Greg would get. So let's say in the past, I purchased these items. I purchased items with the same tags that were, let's say, business and formal. And so in this current email, I'll get an email with content that is tagged with the same tags. It might be different business shoes, but it'll also be formal wear. So in that case, the cards personalize the content for me. And I think, Dom, you were talking about Netflix and Pandora and how they are your friend because they learn what you like and they give you more of what you like and they hide more of what you dislike. They don't want to spam you. So in this way, cards dynamically reorder content. It could be ads, it could just be more data. And they record affinity on a per user record. So it creates this kind of recommendation engine that knows you better and has a higher chance of serving you more correct results in the future. So I'll use the Google Now example. It's my favorite because in Google Now, they've read all your email. So just a public service announcement, they've been doing this from the very beginning. So this morning, I didn't have to set up an alert to wake me up to come here because Google already read my registration email confirmation, and it told me 45 minutes before the conference, Jenny, it's time to go. And so in this case, it didn't give me, 5 ads for buying a surfboard because it knew I was in DC and it knew that it was snowing, right? So it didn't give me a lot of spam. But it did give me was real-time traffic information about how long it'll take there. Maybe it would give me like a parking lot recommendation, and that ad will be clicked on so that the marketer who bought it gets ROI. And I don't feel like I got, my identity invaded. So when the user says, how did you know what I wanted? That's the success that we're looking for, because we're all here to talk about happiness. So the user isn't saying, why did you spy on me? The user is saying, how did you meet this need that I didn't even know that I have? How did you satisfy my wants so wholly? That's what they're talking about when you say, like, how did you know what I wanted? And cards are something for everyone in that there's a lot of back end to build, so your engineers don't feel like cards are just this newfangled front end concept, because in the back end, cards are a page, they're an API, they're an app, they're a JSON file, and they're very challenging and scalable. So it's something that product managers want to work on. It's something that your tech leads will also advocate for. And the last thing is that cards also serve more content above the fold. So in this blog example, you only see one article above the fold, but in some of these extensions that I've designed, let's say you could have 3 blog articles above the fold. You don't have all the information you need, but if you wanted to find out more about Mustangs, you could click on that and the card would turn around. So the back of the card has all the information you need to shove in there, but it doesn't take up more space above the fold. And then in these mini cards, you have the top. After you click on the top, the bottom will come out, and then you can click on the bottom to make the mini cards come back. So just to wrap up and recap, cards help you stack responsively, cards make data lovable, cards delight users, and cards serve more content above the fold. I hope that you'll use this opportunity to lead incremental value for all of your stakeholders. It's kind of rare that design can add value to product and engineering and clients and users. So don't pass up this opportunity, because I don't know when it'll come back. And there are so many resources out there, and I'm available to speak to your company or meetup to get the ball rolling. Thank you.
Okay, so hi everybody. Last lightning talk of the day. Okay. See how I reframe that? All right. So in your program, this talk was titled Positive Psychology in the Architecture of Information Happiness. I've tweaked my topic a little bit, but bear with me and all will be revealed. This is me, and I don't normally put huge photos of myself everywhere, but this was our template, and I wanted you all to have basically the Twitter information at the bottom. This is our company, Design for Context. That's me at Leslo, and of course at WIAD-DC. So when I first started talking and thinking with my colleagues about this topic today, the first thing I asked myself is obviously, what is happiness? What do we mean when we say happiness? And a very superficial amount of research yielded this, which I can't believe no one else has shared today already, but there you go. Can't argue with it. But fortunately, I decided to dig a little bit deeper and came up with the field of positive psychology, which really attempts to turn psychology on its head. You know, rather than looking at disorder in people's lives, maybe let's look at well-being and flourishing, and let's really study how people are thriving and attempt to derive some lessons from that. So the field was really founded and popularized by Abraham Maslow in 1954. And the two gentlemen that I referenced in my proposal, Martin Seligman and Tal Ben-Shahar, took it much farther. In fact, Tal Ben-Shahar has taught two of the most popular courses at Harvard University, which are on positive psychology and leadership. But the scholar that really ended up engaging my interest the most during my research was a gentleman named Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And if you don't think I've been practicing that for 3 weeks, I'm here to tell you I have. He wrote a book called Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience. And of course, I thought, well, how perfect is that? Flow. We talk about flow every day, all day. And obviously, you know, he's writing about optimal experience. So obviously extremely pertinent to our field. And this book he published in 1990. So Csikszentmihalyi's main question in Flow is, well, when do people feel the most happy? He noticed and perceived in his research that despite all of our advantages as a society, we don't really understand happiness any more than we did in ancient times. People often end up feeling anxious and unfulfilled in their lives. And what he discovered was, contrary to what we might think, we're not at our most happy when we're comfortable or relaxed. We're actually happy when our body or mind is being stretched to its limits to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. So when you're really reaching to accomplish a meaningful goal for yourself, those are the moments that maybe in the moment you're not the most happy in, but when you look back, you remember a real sense of being fulfilled. So people who are truly skilled practitioners, like a professional ballet dancer, people who are playing chess, you know, either at any level, really, people who are mountaineering, they all experience and they report experiencing these feelings of flow because they've challenged themselves and really tried to stretch in their accomplishments. But that feeling of flow doesn't only happen in a vacuum. So these skilled practitioners may have set themselves apart by differentiating themselves, by working so hard to really build these skills. But there's also the concept of integration, where those skills are combined with ideas and entities that are beyond yourself. So it really takes both of these aspects to put a person into flow. They're becoming very committed to developing their own skills, but they're also working in a community, collaborating, building those skills with other people. So, for example, if we go back to our mountaineers, there's a wonderful quote in Csikszentmihalyi's book where he talks about this process. And a mountaineer that he interviewed said, "There's no place that more draws the best from human beings than a mountaineering situation. Who can you trust more in the 21st century than these people? People who are after the same discipline, the same self-discipline as yourself, following the deeper commitment. A bond like that with other people is in itself an ecstasy." So while we as information architecture practitioners might not be attaining ecstasy on the side of a mountain, I would argue that our profession can also be seen within this flow model. And of course, there's a model, which is also perfect for us as IAs. And if you think about this model in terms of the learning process, the flow channel that you see down the middle is, I think, what some other psychologists also maybe call the stretch zone. So that's when you're really, when the task or the activity that you're trying to learn is suited to your skills and to your situation. You're not bored, in other words, and you're not in the panic zone at the other end. You're kind of right in the middle, and you're finding that right balance between challenge and interest. And here's how the model kind of works in our psyche. If we map skills along the x-axis, and challenges along the y-axis, a person, and then the flow channel is down the middle, a person begins learning an activity, say you want to learn how to play tennis. The person starts out at A1. So they're kind of low skill, and they're also facing a low challenge too. Maybe they're just starting to learn to hit the ball over the net, say. Mastering hitting the ball over the net happens pretty quickly, so they shift over to A2, which is boredom. You know, their skills are starting to exceed the challenge that they're setting for themselves. Or, you know, they might encounter some people who are better players than them, and they might want to actually play with them. They might want to rise to that skill level. So maybe they're a little anxious about that, and maybe they're being motivated to challenge themselves. So that's when they get back into the flow state. They're out of boredom. They've met the challenge. Okay, so here we are back in flow. But pretty soon, the whole process kicks in again, where you just get bored. Your skill starts to match the situation that you're in. The process repeats itself, but the whole time you're really you're polishing your skills by repeatedly being in the flow state. You're building complexity into your consciousness and learning about this activity. So as practitioners, we're really fortunate to be part of a community that does this organically. We love to go to conferences, we love to attend sessions, we love to learn with each other and learn from each other. We come together, we collaborate, and we build our skills. So once we've attained all that knowledge, that's great, but it turns out that we need project challenges from our clients to exercise these skills as well and get into the flow state. Now, our clients have a somewhat different situation. They come to us with the challenges. Maybe they're anxious. They have a project they need to complete. They're stuck. They don't know what to do. We bring the skills that we've been building, and our role is to design together for the end user to also have this flow experience. Because if you think about it, obviously, we are designing for them to be in flow as well. We want to design an application or an information site that meets their needs across all levels of knowledge and skill, hopefully. So finally, going back to our mountaineering analogy, for us as practitioners, it's about how we work and how we engage each other in our community to get into the flow state. For the customer or the client, it's about the process of working together. It's the combination of our skills as practitioners and the challenge that they bring to the table. Finally, for the end user, it's about the experience. Literally, it's about the flow of the application of the site. It's intentionally designed so the user can find the same balance that we find in our work and hopefully that the client finds in working with us. And of course, when all else fails, there's always ice cream. Thank you. Do we want everybody to come up? Everyone just wants beer or ice cream.
You've mentioned your work with kids. Can you give us an example or two of how you might have used that participatory design or co-creation with adult clients?
Yes, so we used it with some older adults. This was a bunch of years ago, developing an e-health tutorial for them. So what you'll find is that adults will more often than draw, they'll start writing things. So a lot of those paper-based activities actually become more like word-based activities. So you start looking at those kind of things. But again, because it's very accessible, sometimes people enjoy drawing. There's been other people who've tried it where it turned out adults did not like the process. But for the most part, you kind of have to identify what is it that your audience can do, likes to do, is happy with doing, and shoot for that. Not all at once. Oh.
So you mentioned tables and spreadsheets, how they repel users, and I so agree with that. And you showed us a spreadsheet, and then you showed us a card. So we couldn't see the spreadsheet, but we can assume that those were numbers and so forth, right? And then you.
Numbers transfer from the spreadsheet into.
Okay. Oh, right. So
I'll stand next to you.
Okay. So how would you do that if it weren't numbers and you wanted to put it on the cards, a similar card from the spreadsheet that wasn't numbers? So I can't remember if you had icons or pictures. So do you get my?
Yeah, so you can have a fixed layout so that on the board, on the canvas, you have, let's say, a quadrant just for images, and then a second quadrant maybe for some titles, and then a third quadrant for some text, and then a fourth quadrant for a big call to action button. So that you just systemize the amount of space you allocate for each type of content, and then you just repeat and repeat and repeat. Good question. Thank you.